Good evening, everybody. The time is 7 p.m. and I now open and welcome you all to our... that weather is ominous or symbolic or something, but here we are at our final ordinary meeting of the Borough of Queenscliff Council for 2023. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands, waters and skies, the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Council acknowledges and respects their continuing connection to land, waters, skies, culture, and the contribution they make to the life and spirit of our community. We pay respect to past and present elders and extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Item 2, present and apologies. We have all councillors in attendance and all...
Stuart Hanson is an apology for the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you. Item 3, pecuniary interest and conflict of interest disclosures. Councillors, can I call on any conflicts to be declared if they exist? Nope. No. None. And from the officers? Nope, no conflicts, thank you. Item 4, leave of absence of councillor. On 29 November 2023, the CEO received advice from me, Councillor Tolhurst, indicating a leave of absence to be taken from 17 January to 7 Feb in 2024. The recommendation is that Council grant this period of leave. Do I have someone to move that motion, please? This is a test of whether your colleagues respect and like you or not. I have a mover in Councillor Minty and someone to second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. All in favour of granting the leave? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Item 5, public question time. 5.1, public question status update. There are no public questions outstanding. Item 5.2, public questions. So in accordance with Council's public question time guidelines, questions must have been written and received by the CEO prior to 3 p.m, and in accordance with those provisions, we have received 6 questions today. I'll commence with our first question, which is from the PLCA. So David or any PLCA reps, you happy for me to read that? Thank you. We have reviewed the tender document for the proposed bike park development. This is nominated as a design construct project in 2 stages as described in the tender document, which nominates 2 features that should be included in the design with no other design requirements, but indicates that other issues, fencing, signage, safety issues, etc., should be included as the contractor's responsibility. Stage 1, design and approval process, and Stage 2, construction, to proceed only after funding confirmed. A budget of $520,000 is indicated as available for this project. There are 2 questions, the first of which is how can a contractor quote a firm price on an undefined scope? And question 2 is it appropriate to indicate a budget for a tendered project? I will ask the CEO to respond to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, and thank you, David on behalf of PLCA. Bike parks are a unique concept and they have a very unique industry practice. In that the best outcome is achieved where the design and construction are undertaken by one company. So in doing that, we're working with a very limited group of potential tenderers. The scope provided for a defined area and a hybrid of a pump track and jumps track, which are very specific design things, are sufficient to allow creativity by the designer, and they can provide a fixed price due to their experience in the field. So that's in response to your first question. In response to your second question, I'll just, in accordance with the Council question time guidelines, I'll take the question on notice and provide a response.
Our second question today comes from the QCA. David Connolly, happy for me to read it? It is noted in the Active Transport Strategy 4.2 Sustainable Transport Action 3 of the Borough of Queenscliff Climate Emergency Response Plan seeks to convert Council's fleet to zero emissions vehicles. It is noted Council allocated $200,000 in the current budget for renewal vehicles. Has Council purchased any zero emission vehicles, and if so, can the items' assets be individually listed and costed for the benefit of ratepayers, And what are the expected 3-year costs for further replacements as part of the ATS strategy and SERP Action 3? Will there be additional demands for electric vehicles beyond the annual renewal program? And again, I will ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, thank you, Dave, for the question. So the allocation in this year's budget of $200,000 includes funds for changing over a number of cars, including the community care or aged care vehicle and the CEO's vehicle, and that to occur during the financial year. All our replacement cars this year will be electric vehicles. At the moment, Council has one electric vehicle in the fleet, and that was purchased early in 2023 financial year, and that cost us $50,000. This vehicle's been used as a pool car around Council. That's a Nissan Leaf, which Melissa Gunn in particular drives quite often. In accordance with Council's public question time guidelines, I'll take the second question on notice.
Public question 3 comes from Zelda Walters. Sorry, David, we're going to take... I think that's a distinct question, so we can take that on notice as well, David. Thank you, Zelda.
Okay, well, I should have run all my questions on together, but my question is, what is the Council officer's proposal for linking the Bellarine Rail Trail to Queenscliff, the preferred concept for Murray Road, and has Council fully considered the impacts on residents, ratepayers and locals who live in Murray Road and who will be most affected by these changes? That's my question.
Great. Sorry, I have several other...
It was supposed to, it's all one question, but it was meant to be run on, so I continued just the first two. That's the pertinent thing. So I can read it again. What are the Council officers' proposals for linking the Bellarine Rail Trail to Queenscliff, the preferred concept for Murray Road, and has Council fully considered the impacts on residents, ratepayers and locals who live in Murray Road who will be most affected by these changes?
Thanks for clarifying, Zelda. The active transport, as you know, is a matter for consideration in tonight's agenda, so we'll provide a full response once Council has made a decision on that item.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd also question on notice is, can Council provide the 3 positive benefits to the ratepayers in the borough for short, medium and long term of both this ATP strategy and also what you're proposing with the bike path? I'd like you to take that on notice.
That question can be taken on notice. Thank you. Item 4 comes from David Kenwood. Happy for me to do it? Thanks. On page 30 of today's Age, December 13, 2023, a notice of an application for determination of native title in Victoria is listed. The claim on behalf of the Wadawurrung covers around 12,511 square kilometres and is located in the area surrounding Geelong and Ballarat, including parts of Bass Strait and Port Phillip Bay. The relevant LGAs included are the Borough of Queenscliff, Ararat Rural City, the cities of Ballarat, Greater Geelong, Melton, Wyndham and the shires of Colac, Otway, Corangamite, Golden Plains, Hepburn, Moorabool, Pyrenees and Surf Coast. Will the Borough of Queenscliff become a party to this application, and in general terms, are there any issues for the Borough and the operations of Queenscliff Council if the claim is successful? And I'll ask the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, and thank you, Dave, for your question. Council has until the 26th of March next year to determine if it will apply to become a party to the matter. So in the coming months, Council will work through the details of the native title claim and a process to inform a decision about whether or not it will become a party to the hearing on the application.
Thank you. Our 5th question tonight comes from David Connolly. Thanks. The current CEO report notes implementing a revised corporate structure following completion of a staff consultation process that apparently did not save overall employee costs. There are reported around 70 staff on what the council terms a small team, with the FTE rising to over 46 staff in the past year, a near 10% increase. Given council is operating with a series of 4 annual deficits based on the LGPF measure over the past 5 years, as per annual report data, and potentially unsustainable should the level of losses continue. Pardon me, put the intonation and comma in the wrong place. But can the CEO outline what this recent staff consultation process involved and whether he has identified where efficiencies and cost savings can be made in this small team to reverse the operating deficits in the current and upcoming financial year? And I will ask the CEO again to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the complexity of the question, I'll take it on notice.
Our final question this evening today comes from Michelle Jepson, and I can't see her in our gallery, so I will read it out. This is also regarding the active transport strategy. This is a 3-part strategy: walkway, cycle lanes and roadworks, with 3 potential funding sources. In its current form, I do not believe the ATS should be passed before the completion of the Coastal Management Plan and a more detailed implementation plan for the ATS. Is it your intention to complete an implementation plan that would permit a closer examination of individual roadworks, standards, guidelines, and surfaces applicable to walking and cycle paths and potential costs to individual property owners? Such information, had it been available, may have avoided the kickback council had received from the hasty installation of road calming infrastructure on Ocean Road and the installation and subsequent removal of the roundabout on Kirk Road. So I'll respond in the first instance, and that is it's not dissimilar to question 3, and that's that because the active transport strategy is a matter for consideration in tonight's agenda, we will provide a full response following the decision on this item. So that brings us to the conclusion of public questions. Thank you to all who submitted one. Brings us to item 6, which is confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. 6.1, Ordinary Council meeting held on 22 November 2023. A copy of the minutes has been distributed and is distributed under separate cover. And I wish to put forward an alternate motion to the recommendation, and that's that the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting held on 22 November 2023 as distributed be confirmed as an accurate record with the following changes, and that is to item 14.5, review of instruments of delegation, and in this instance, Councillor Grout was the seconder for that motion. It currently lists Councillor Tolhurst. And I suppose if my colleagues are satisfied with that change, may I call for a seconder, please? I'll take Councillor Grigau as our seconder. And with that, I'll put it to the vote with that amendment. So all in favour? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.2, special meeting confidential minutes on 8 November 2023. These minutes have also been distributed and exist under separate cover, and the recommendation is that the minutes as presented be confirmed as an accurate record. Do I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. And a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Minty. All in favour of adopting those minutes as presented? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 7 is our record of informal meetings of councillors. And the recommendation here is again to confirm that the list as presented in adjunct to item 7 be noted and accurate, of course. Someone to move this as an accurate record, please. Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. And I'm now seeking a seconder, Councillor Minty. Thank you. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 8, notice of motion. 8.1, notice of motion status update. No notices of motion are outstanding. 8.2, motion on notice. No notices of motion were received. Item 9, petitions and joint letters. 9.1, petition, relocation of the EV chargers from Learmonth Street. So at the ordinary meeting of council held on November 22, we received a petition addressed to the Mayor and councillors from Josephine Pitt and Linda Pettygrove regarding electric vehicle charging stations in Learmont Street, Queenscliff. So that having sat on the table for the month, we now have a recommendation before us, and that is that council note the petition received with a total of 133 signatures regarding the relocation of the EV chargers from Learmont Street. Item 2 defers the item to the next ordinary meeting of council to allow more time to consider the implications associated with the request. And 3 requests the CEO to write to the authors of the petition regarding the outcome of this decision. Do I have someone to move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Minty, and a seconder. Councillor Ebbels, thank you. Councillor Minty, did you wish to speak to this motion? No. Councillor Ebbels? Anyone else to speak to the motion?
I will, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau.
Great shame that when residents take the time and effort to actually write a petition to actually voice their concerns, but then council actually doesn't spend the time to actually fully address their concerns on time. And you know, we've had a month to do it, and we should really be concentrating to get those answers back to them in a timely manner.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion before I put it to the vote? No, thank you. All in favour? All opposed? Thank you. It's so passed. I didn't read out specific names.
Can we take the note on the division on this? Thank you.
Councillor Grigau has called for a division, so I'll call again for those in favour of the recommendation as presented against 9.1. In favour, I have Councillor Grout, Councillor Ebbels, Councillor Tolhurst, Councillor Minty, and all opposed I have Councillor Grigau. And I note that the motion is still passed. Thank you. Item 10, our functions attended list. So this captures the events at which council was represented from 16 November to 7 December. And really here we're seeking to have the report be received. Do I have someone to move this, please? Thank you, Councillor Minty. And a seconder. Councillor Ebbels. All in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 11. Chief Executive Officer. 11.1, Chief Executive Officer Report for December 2023. And at this point, I'll hand over to the CEO to talk through this report.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I'll take the report as read. Yeah, just as read, and I'm happy to take any questions that councillors may have.
Thank you. So to put this on the table and commence any questions, I'll ask again for someone to move the recommendation that the report be received for December 2023. Thank you, Councillor Minty. And a seconder. Oh, thank you, Councillor Ebbels. I'll put it to you first, Councillor Minty, if there are questions for the CEO or comments against the report. To you, Councillor Ebbels.
Yes, just one question to the CEO about the Christmas closure. The key services will continue over the break. Obviously, the information centre will be open except for Christmas Day. What happens with, for example, bylaws if people call the main Borough Queenscliff line for whether it's a bylaws or something like that? What's the, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels, and through you, Mayor. The local laws officers will be working through that period. They'll have access to an after-hours line, and they'll also have their mobile phones, and they'll be checking emails. So anything that comes through the system will get to them, and they'll have a presence through that. And aged care services will continue through that period as well.
Further questions for the CEO?
Yes, just regarding the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Can we, other than a Facebook page on the council website, what programs are the council arranging for this program?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Grigau. We were arranging some training for staff through that period. and we will do that, but unfortunately we couldn't do it through the week, so I think that's now rescheduled to February, early next year. And we're again investigating what more we can do with the funding that we receive, and what more we can do in terms of the working with the Barwon Southwest Women's Health group around their Respect 2040 strategy. So we still have some work to do in that space.
It's excellent we're providing services for the staff, but what about the ratepayers and the people of the borough to reduce gender-based violence?
Yeah, so that's the continuing work, sorry, through you, Mayor. That's the continuing work we're doing with the Respect 2040 advisory group. So we're working through a number of programs that are facilitated by other organisations that have some skills in that area. And our role is really to set the strategy for the year, to provide some insights into what's important in our community, and generally provide support to those organisations.
Further questions for the CEO on the report? No, with that I'll put the recommendation about receipt of the report to the vote. So all in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 12, health and wellbeing. 12.1, Queenscliff Rural Australians for Refugees. The author of this report is the CEO. Martin, I don't know if you plan to talk to it briefly.
Through you, Mayor. I think it's just to note that this is an issue that Council has been very proactive on over a number of years now, and as the report sets out, Councillor Ebbels at the National General Assembly earlier this year worked with some other councillors to address this particular issue, but this is an important decision of Council to continue that advocacy work.
Thank you, Martin. The recommendation following the report is that Council writes to the federal government to advise that it supports and endorses the Combined Refugee Action Group resolution calling for a review of the federal government fast-track determination process. Do I have someone to move that? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Grigard. Councillor Ebbels, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I guess it's probably prefer if we didn't have to bring this motion to the council as well, because this is a system which the new federal government at the time acknowledged that it was a flawed system and they needed to fix it, and it was part of their election promise. And here we are, nearly 2.5 years, I think, later, that we're still having this same conversation. And obviously we, as a community, we're I think it states there one of 170 refugee welcome zones around the country. So it's something that this council should be very proud of, what they've, how they've acknowledged and accepted and embraced refugees into our community. As the report states, the Borough of Queenscliff, we've advocated and received support at the MAV State Council and also at the Australian Local Government Association Assembly in Canberra as well. What this is asking is the federal government need to act on their election promises, so people, the refugees, can get on with their lives without having the threat of being deported to a land they used to call home, that would place their lives and their family lives in danger. After the last federal election, the federal government acknowledged that the approval system was flawed and unfair, and this needed to be rectified as soon as possible. This hasn't been done, and we have a lot of people who live in our community and contribute to our community. They pay taxes, they work, some of them have families, and I think it's really important that we ask the federal government to actually follow through on their election promise. I think it's also noted that this is not, we're not talking here about the people you've seen in the news recently, talking about people who have been in detention and having to be released after the High Court decision. This is people who have been sometimes 10, 15 years in this country living in limbo, not knowing from day to day where their future lies. And I think it's about time we, us and I know other councils around the country are supporting this motion. So thank you very much, Mayor
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels. Councillor Grigard,
I'd like to speak to this regarding this motion. Actually, would have been nicer and more informative if we actually have a proper briefing, because this issue is a federal issue that we should need a full grasp on. We're a local council, and going through some of the papers and saying some of these people that are affected actually have already been rejected, and they're already going. So it's actually a very complex matter that local council is way above our scope and time to put resources in to devote. It's great. We all support human rights and we want betterment for more people, but on these issues I think we should be really concentrating at our job at hand about delivering services for the people here in the borough.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. I'll invite other councillors to speak for or against the motion. Councillor Minty.
Thank you, Mayor. As Councillor Rebel said, this is not the group that were continued to be locked up by the federal governments of both persuasions. This is a group of people who were seeking asylum. They're not illegal arrivals, they are asylum seekers, and they quite rightly should have been welcomed into our country and vetted and been provided with the welcome that many people of different nationalities have been provided with previously and become first-class citizens within Australia. We're a nation of significant wealth, and we're also intelligent enough to be able to walk and chew gum. So that means that even though we sit at council, we've been invited to participate in in support for these people, and I think it's absolutely the right thing to do to be able to support them. It would reduce significantly the red tape that would enable them to get better work, provide for their families, a better education, and become full-service citizens within our nation. And it's about time we got on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. Councillor Grout, do you wish to speak to the motion, for or against? No? I also wish to speak in support of the motion and thank Queenscliff Rural Australians for Refugees, notably Sue Longmore and Kathy Bond, but also many others, for both bringing this request to us and their ongoing work in supporting our constituents. These people live with us, among us, next to us, and there is immense support that's required to help them through this journey. And as Councillor Ebbels has said, the motion acknowledges that many refugees were given greater protections when the Safe Haven Enterprise visas and the temporary protection visa systems were ended. However, these people remain in limbo. Councillor Grigau is also correct. It's an enormously complex issue, and that's at the centre of the criticism of the Fast Track program. It removes, importantly, the right for meaningful review of asylum seeker and refugee cases, and which neglects the complex environments in which they've come from and the relationships they've formed in communities, and often neglects to acknowledge the immense risk involved in returning someone to their country of origin. And they also, to date, have only been accepted in English, which is very complicated if you've arrived in a country and speak no other language than your own. As the report states, and as Councillor Ebbels has stated, we are a refugee welcome zone. The borough is a member of the local government mayoral task force supporting people seeking asylum, and we do work or advocate for refugees and asylum seekers in a number of forums. So I think this is completely consistent with work we've done to date. Our neighbours, City of Greater Geelong and Surf Coast Shire, have also endorsed this, and the combined Refugee Action Group, of which Queenscliff Rural Australians for Refugees are a part, collectively signed this motion unanimously and endorsed it at their recent forum. So I'd like to also commend Councillor Ebbels just for your work in this space, and again reiterate my support for this. But with that, it's back to you to right to reply,
yeah.
Of course.
Sorry, yeah, thank you, Mayor Tollers. And just following, as Councillor Grigau mentioned, that some of these people have been rejected, and the reason being is, as the federal government have acknowledged that it's actually a flawed system that they've been rejected on. That's why they've asked and acknowledged that this was the case. And again, we should be involved because they are members of our community, and there's also members of our community who are advocating to the federal government. So that's why I feel that it's important to bring this to council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ebbels and councillors for the debate and contributions. With that, I'll now put the recommendation of writing to the federal government to the vote. So all in favour? All opposed? Thank you. The motion is carried. Item 13, Heritage Planning and Infrastructure. 13.1, Planning Permit Activity Report. I love it when an officer just appears at that lectern. So it's our senior planner, Tim. Over to you to talk through this month's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. In relation to the Planning Permit Activity Report up until the 4th of December 2023, I'll take the report as read. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll just add the following comments. In relation to planning permits 2022 0446 McDonald Road, Queenscliff. So on the 5th of December, so a day after this report was produced, no, it's not. Yeah, that's why I'm making comment about it. So in relation to the planning permit for 6 McDonald Road, so on the 5th of December, VCAT advised the planning officers that the applicant was appealing this matter. We have advised councillors of that. At this stage, the schedule for next year for this matter so for the helicopter site, Councillor Grout. So at this point, there's a compulsory conference scheduled for the 9th of May 2024, and a case hearing is scheduled for the 15th and 16th of July 2024, and we'll keep councillors appraised of progress during next year, up until those dates. Just a reminder that because there's no council meeting in January, the Planning Department will provide councillors with a planning activity report in January, so halfway through January, essentially a report like this to keep you appraised of planning applications. And finally, there's no planning review meetings scheduled before the next council meeting in February 2024.
Thank you for those updates, Tim. I'll put this on the table to get any questions put forward. So do I have someone to move the recommendation that the planning permit activity report be received? Thank you, Councillor Ebbels, and a seconder, Councillor Minty. Thank you. Councillor Ebbels, questions?
Yes, just one question, Tim, that's regarding to application 2023062, which is the 105 to 107 Point Lonsdale Road. I just note that councillors have received a briefing, but I just want to check. We were advised, I'm pretty sure we're advised that that application does require go through the cultural heritage assessment. So from I'm thinking of the timing, from our point of view, our clock hasn't started yet in regard to the deliberation of the 60 days required. Is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor. Well, so essentially it's a request for further information. So yeah, the 60-day clock hasn't been set, and so we're waiting to receive that.
Okay, thank you.
Do other councillors wish? Councillor Grigau?
Yes, could I please have some details or rough estimates of how much it would cost for the VCAT if we do go to a full hearing regarding McDonald Road? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, and Tim, I'm happy to take this one. So, as the councillors will know, our most recent experience in VCAT was the 5 Beach Street, which was it came in at a cost of about $45,000 to defend that decision. We think that this will not cost quite as much because we won't need a heritage expert, but we may need some other expertise to defend it. So we're estimating it at this point to be between $30,000 to $35,000. We've recently received advice from Harwood Andrews that unfortunately they cannot represent us. They have a conflict, having represented the applicant on other matters. So we're in the process of seeking another credible planning lawyer, which may come at a premium, we think. Yep.
Thank you, Martin. Other questions or comments? Thank you, Councillor Grout.
Yeah, it's more a thanks. It's like an end of year thanks, because I was the planning portfolio holder up until last month, and I didn't get the chance to say this then. But we get to the end of 2023, and Tim, I wanted you to pass on my thanks, and I think on behalf of the council, our thanks for the work of the planning team through the year. And I understand that the process for some of the more challenging applications is a bit of a team effort. So well done for delivering all those planning assessments and the negotiations and then decisions throughout 2023. I know Bryden is sort of central to most of them. And also thanks for the support that he and your teams provided to the council. Like we've had briefings and we've had information that's really assisted us as council to make decisions when we've removed delegation. And in 2023, there's a couple of decisions that we've made having removed delegations. One of them actually started in 2022, which is, I think, 6 McDonald Road, but the decision was still made this year. And 66 King Street was a second one that where we made a decision this year. So thanks for your help with those. And I'll just contrast that with the previous year, which I think there were 3 decisions that we made, and I think 2021 there were the 3 decisions. So we're tracking at 3, 3 and 2, and it's over to Ross Ebbels to guide the team through 2024. But look, it was a really significant decision too, the one that's gone to VCAT, and we seem to have, in my time on council, avoided the VCAT tribunal until 5 Beach Street. So yes, it cost us money. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't all failure because the decision was overturned. There were a number of items in the tribunal's decision that actually showed that there was some value in making the decision that I think our council did in refusing the whole lot of the permit, so the application at the time. So I'm really saying an end of year thanks and a Christmas message of thank you planning team from me and the council.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. I'll pass that on to the team.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. If there are no further comments or questions for Tim, you're free to go, and I'll put the recommendation that the report be received to the vote. So all in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 13.2, Active Transport Strategy. Now we do have Stuart noted as an apology, so I'm looking at our CEO, who I suspect will give us a rundown of the report before us.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I will keep it brief because this is obviously a very important decision for council to make, and I'm looking forward to the discussion amongst the councillors. This is a project that started in January 2022 with some community consultation. It's now been through 4, I think 5 maybe rounds of community consultation, and I think we've ended up with a document that still at its bones is a great framework for a council to improve active transport in the borough, and depending on the outcome tonight, I know that the officers are looking forward to working with council and going forward. I just will quickly note we did receive a couple of questions around Murray Road. There hasn't been any decisions made about Murray Road and what we will do there, but there is a commitment in council to do some consultation early next year with some options, and that's community consultation, and we'll be taking that to the community. So with that in mind, I think everyone in the room is aware of the ATS and has some great knowledge about it. I'll happy to take questions if there are any.
Thank you for that summary, Martin. We do have a recommendation before us that the strategy be adopted as presented, but I wish to put forward an alternate motion and move that Council A adopt the Active Transport 2023 to 2033 as presented. B, directs council officers to develop an implementation plan that identifies priority actions for the next 2 years. C, directs council officers to present a draft of this implementation plan to council at an assembly in Q1 2024, and D, directs council officers to include the Murray Road speed reduction options community consultation in the implementation plan as an action to be undertaken in Q1 2024. So I do call for a seconder for that alternate motion. Thank you, Councillor Grout. I'll put it to questions first, actually, if there are questions of clarification before we wade into the debate. Thank you, Councillor Grigau.
Yes, just requiring, regarding tourism economy, it states that tourism is a vital component of the borough, its economy and community. Can you advise what percentage is the tourism a percentage of the economy? That's saying that is so vital, it's a vital component.
Through you, Mayor. Look, I will take that one on notice so I can get the figures right, and I'll get back to council on that.
Thank you. Are there other clarifying questions at this stage? And then, as I said, I'll commence the debate or speakers for and against.
Sorry, just one clarifying. Mr. CEO, you mentioned about Murray Road, about consultation. I'm presuming, so I think it was 3 years ago we did the initial consultation. So there may be further different options that may be on the table in the next round of consultation in Q1 next year.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for that question, Councillor Wills. Yes, there will be. So we won't be representing the options that the community's already provided feedback on. So there will be a new, I think it's up to 4 new options for the community to review.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. As the mover of this alternate motion, I wish just to speak for it, obviously, and that is that the adoption of actually, in the first instance, I'd really like to acknowledge the immense amount of community consultation and people that have had a touch point with this strategy, whether they've liked or not the strategy's proposed. Your feedback has made it stronger, and it's been a really interesting undertaking for councillors and officers to have that level of high engagement and really seriously consider how we continue to do consultation. So in the first instance, I'd like to acknowledge and thank those who did participate. It's been an incredibly long journey for this strategy, earmarked as a key project in the council plan and identified by the SERP, and it provides opportunity to improve safety and access for those to walk, ride and use mobility vehicles or modes of e-transport around the borough. I think broadly this is a strategy about improvements, about innovation, and it's about using tested strategies to achieve greater rates of sustained engagement by our community and visitors in ways that reflect our size, needs, heritage and environment with a desired outcome of a healthier and more connected community. There are many changes we've made, but in the final stages of this, the very obvious one is having removed all reference to lower speeds in the 30-kilometre strategy, but there's also some small things that we know are priorities to community that have resurfaced or gained extra prioritisation in that process, and that includes things like making vegetation management on shared paths and the improvement of strategies that inform this a priority. We recognise this goes beyond the wellbeing of people, but is something that needs to be done and that council wants to focus on. There's also a focus in the document on low-cost social improvement strategies, such as reviews of signage and wayfinding to reduce busy areas. So it's not explicitly about expensive or costly and time-consuming infrastructure. The inclusion of the recently finalised and published G21 integrated transport strategy shows there's lots of alignment between our ambitions for active transport and that of the region. And I think it's, as I said right from the beginning, highlighted the role of community consultation for the implementation of all and any strategies in the document. So I really look forward to seeing this strategy rolled out and working with officers on the 2-year implementation plan to ensure it's got legacy, but also very clear what we want to bite off in the remainder of our term. To the seconder of the motion, Councillor Grout, do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, have you left anything for me to say? So I can endorse all those comments, Councillor Tolhurst, and I'll just add then a few observations, and I'll start off with the fact that I have been somewhat troubled by this development of this strategy document, both the process and the outcome, and in particular the Geelong Addy and Herald Sun's reporting on the first draft that we put out for consultation, I was pretty upset by sort of misquoting or selective quoting by those newspapers, which was picked up in Facebook, of course. Now, I'm going to support this alternate motion. I think it's going to address the concerns that I had about implementation. There's an implementation proposal in the strategy document. That's not an implementation plan, which is why this alternate motion is being put here. So my support for this motion is on the understanding, as has been indicated by officers who are involved, that they are going to carry out data collection. There will be appropriate problem solving, and we will be doing appropriate decision making around each of the significant items that are in this strategy document. And I guess the first test will be Murray Road. So it's really pleasing after 2 years to get to this point where we can launch a strategy, and I'm really looking forward to the implementation plan to see which key priorities we're going to be able to look at for funding in our next budget. And the plan should run into the next council that gets elected end of next year. I'm pleased to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Do other councillors wish to speak for or against this motion? Councillor Minty.
Thank you, Mary. I speak on behalf of the motion. And like others, the active transport strategy obviously had a very difficult birth because people either forgot, ignored or chose to ignore the fact that this was part of a community consultation on the active transport strategy, and they had every opportunity to enhance it, to improve it. Some chose just to try and pull it down without reading what was there for the rest of the document. My particular interest in this is part of the moving around the borough by our residents, in particular the unique feature that is Point Lonsdale's canopy and the maintenance of that. And I would say to everybody who has an interest or lives within Point Lonsdale that this is something that you should cherish, and as part of the strategy, we hope with the early onset of an action plan for this, we will, as this council, be able to see where that sits in as part of the action, and that we can have some say and at least some input into that to ensure that the canopy over Point Lonsdale survives, and as would the planning that would see it prosper. So it is important, I think, the Mayor's change to the motion here, because that means we do get a look at what's going to happen. We know the timeline that will be used, and we can have an effect on something that's very important. So I would be more than happy to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. Other councillors to speak for or against the motion? No.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to
Councillor
actually
Grigao.
speak against the motion of this paper. It's the beginning of the start of the urbanisation of the borough. Constantly, the paper's final strategy referenced City of Maryback. We are not a suburb of Melbourne or Geelong. The genesis of this paper was actually from the CERT, and to say and the objectives was actually to reduce carbon emissions. Look, it's admirable that we all want to get people healthy and moving, but the paper just concentrates on these key issues that actually drove us into the issue of leading us to the 40 kilometres. And it's still behind the scenes that written in the paper saying that where the objective is to lower the speed limits. Just remember, Queenscliff and Point Lonsdale are coastal rural towns. We are not suburbs of Melbourne or Geelong.
Thank you, Councillor Grigao. And in using my right of reply, I wish to perhaps correct or provide some comfort to the members of our community to say that all the strategies in this policy are subject to being implemented and consulted upon to consider the local context, to consider that we are a coastal town, to consider that we have high heritage values. They would be subject to consideration to other policies such as our coastal and marine management plan and other policies that ensure we respect our local environment. So there's little indication, while they may have been tested in urbanised areas, they would be picked up and dropped in like that. And as I said, consultation is very much intended to remain a part of the implementation so that this is a plan that really benefits people who live in the borough and come to live in the borough in the future, not just now, I suppose, because there's certainly a future focus to this. It's about where we want to be and who we want to be.
It didn't prevent the EV chargers being placed in the wrong place.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. That's not relevant to the agenda, not to this agenda item anyway. With that, and the debate concluded, I will put the alternate motion as presented to the vote. So all in favour? And all opposed? Thank you.
Call a division on this, thank you.
Councillor Grigau has called a division. So all in favour of the alternate motion as presented. I have Councillors Grout, Ebbels, Tolhurst and Minty, and all opposed? Councillor Grigau, and the motion is still carried. Thank you. At this point, now that we've got a determination and a decision of council, we can return to our two public questions that sought some clarity on particularly Murray Road, but parts of the active transport strategy. So we'll come back to question 3. Zelda, your question. And as it's written here, so I will refer to this. What is the council officer's proposal for linking the Bellarine Rail Trail to Queenscliff and the preferred concept for Murray Road? And I'll ask the CEO now to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Zelda, the officers don't have a preferred concept. We've put some options together that we think require community input, and so the consultation early next year will really inform any recommendation we make to the councillors. Yep.
Sorry, Zelda, we don't take secondary questions. If it's a clarifying.
I'm happy to address it. So through the community consultation, because we don't have a preferred option, each of the options that we presented to the community, and we're anticipating the community that's affected will provide feedback on how it does impact on them.
And
excuse me, can I make a correction? Because wasn't there at a stage that we had a council assembly that Officer Stuart Hanson noted the preferred option as to close Murray Road?
I think that question can be taken on notice. It's seeking to single out an officer, which is not in accordance with the conduct of questions, but a question about clarification around...
Can I just, because the language that Councillor Grigau used then was the closing of Murray Road, that's not an option that's been presented to council. So the options that will come to community consultation will be responded to by the community. It's not unreasonable for officers to have positions, but council's made the determination to go out to community consultation, and councillors will be the ones that make the decision.
And Zelda, I've got other questions from you here, and those will be, as noted, responded to in writing and taken on notice. So the other question we had related to the active transport strategy was public question 6 from Michelle Jepson. I will also actually at this point ask the CEO to respond to Michelle's question.
Through you, Mayor, and through the recommendation that, the alternate motion that council has adopted, there will be an implementation plan that identifies priority actions for the next 2 years. It should be noted that the adoption of the ATS does not commit any budget expenditure. It's a strategy and a strategic document, and it will guide priorities when we're seeking external grant funding for projects or making budget decisions within council. Thank you.
Thank you. So that does now fully conclude item 13.2 and of course our public questions. And it does bring us to item 13.3, which is the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserved project update. And I'll invite Abby to introduce and speak to this report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. I'll take the report as read, but I'm happy to take any questions on the item.
Thank you, Abby. We do have a recommendation to note this update, but in the spirit of having done this several times tonight, I also wish to put another alternate motion to my colleagues for consideration, and that is in response to the report presented, A, that Council does indeed note the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve project update as presented. B, directs Council to bring monthly updates to ordinary meetings detailing progress of this project. And C, directs Council to update the Borough of Queenscliff website in line with ordinary meeting updates.
Through me, just before you do put that motion, council officers rather than council.
Sure. Yes,
Yep.
Thank you. As per the creation of this report. So council officers, thank you, which would slightly alter parts B and C of the alternate motion. Thank you. I can provide that in writing after the fact, noting that change. Thank you. With that noted, do I have anyone in support of that alternate motion and to second it? Thank you, Councillor Grout. I don't wish to speak to the motion or have questions for Abby, so I will put it to Councillor Grout if you wish to say anything or ask questions of Abby.
I'll just say that I'm really pleased to see this update in this ordinary meeting, and I think it'd be good practice that we have for the duration of this project, which is envisaged to run to June. We're hoping to complete the works in June. Pretty ambitious, actually, but I am confident with the process, and I'm confident with the project manager, and we're tracking sort of along a critical path that's sort of still in the timeline. So I'm confident that we'll give it a good shot. Now, we're working to this plan knowing that there are some key risks there. They've been identified. We believe we're managing them, but a number of these risks actually do put time pressure on the project. So I guess the delivery of the project by the end of June is very challenging, but the monthly updates we'll get from now till then will tell everybody how we're tracking, and I think that's good practice.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Are there other questions for Abby or comments for or against the alternate motion put? Thank you, Councillor Minty.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Grout and the other councillors for being able to bring this particular piece of this document. The document talks about restoration works on World War I and II areas. Feels like we've been punching until then, from that day to now, to try and get something up as far as the Point Lonsdale Lighthouse Reserve. It is a significant piece for Point Lonsdale. It really does need to be completed. It looks like we are going to achieve that as a council, and I'd like to congratulate all the community groups for their support and their input into how this is going to turn out, and I just encourage them to stay for the final couple of yards, because I think it'll it'll turn out very well for us all. So congratulations, Councillor Grout, congratulations to the Mayor and councillors for getting us this far, and congratulations to council officers.
Is there any further debate on this item before I put the motion, alternate motion to the vote?
Through you, Mayor, I was hoping that someone would give Abby a hard time, given this is the first time that she's spoken.
It's Christmas.
Okay.
Thanks, Martin.
But you've been warned, Abby. No, thank you for your work on this project so far, and not knowing the outcome yet because it hasn't been put to the vote. Progress is moving swiftly, and there's really engaged rigour and application of all staff and different stakeholders. So it's been a really enjoyable process to be a part of so far. With that, I'll put the alternate motion to the vote. So all in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Abby. Item 14, Governance and Finance. 14.1, Review of Draft Governance Rules. And I think, looking at our slender line up to the right, we might be back over to the CEO to speak briefly to the report.
Thank you. Yes, and through you, Mayor, Jenny has an apology. Her son's receiving an award tonight at one of the school presentations, so we thought that was important that she attended that. Through you, just that this is a process that Council goes through on occasion, and this year the Council has asked the officers to have a look at the governance rules, especially in respect to question time, and in particular we were going through a period where we were receiving lots of questions. So that started the process earlier this year, and then we presented a draft of the proposed changes to Council in June, and then again in August, and then August and then September. And then in September, councillors very bravely took it upon themselves to go into Cabinet and work through the final iteration. So the intent today is for the governance rules that are important to managing meetings and how Council works with each other will be now put on public exhibition for feedback, and that will be for a period across the next 6 weeks, I think, or 8 weeks. Yep. So we're really encouraging people to provide feedback.
Thank you, Martin. So the recommendation before us is that Council place the draft governance rules on public exhibition and seek community feedback for the period from Monday 18 December 2023 to 11:59 on Friday the 19th of January 2024. Do I have someone to move that recommendation, please? Thank you, Councillor Grigau. And a seconder for this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Minty. Councillor Grigau, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to just make one correction, that the genesis of this revision of the governance laws were only made as a request from councillors for only the public question time and a right of reply. That's the truth of the matter, that's all we requested, and we ended up with a wholesale update. So here we are. That's what the delay was. I think it's very important that the public know, how the council works, and to be truthful and make sure that the public has a say on how it's run. So I encourage everyone to pay attention, go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and drag up any of your concerns and report it to all councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grigau. Councillor Minty, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to support Councillor Grigau. I think it's a very important document. We talk often and long about process. This is the document that provides the framework for the process of what we do here, and I think it's very important. So any input that improves our processes here is worthwhile. So I too would like to recommend to any of our residents who are so inclined to have a good look at it. And let us know what you think, and any recommendations would be good.
Thank you, Councillor Minty. Other councillors to speak to this motion? Councillor Graup.
Yes, so I'll guess I'll reiterate a little bit what both Councillor Grigau and Minty said in stating that the councillors did ask for updates on petitions and public questions, and then officers have looked at what other councillors are doing in governance and come up with some suggestions which they think will add value around notices of motion and urgent business. So I'm strongly recommending, and councillors have had a look at this, and we've had a fair bit of debate about this. So the version you see in this proposed changes to the governance rules has been, if I can, mashed about a bit. I'm strongly recommended that interesting parties in the community have a look at what changes are being proposed here, all of those changes, particularly anybody who's been a councillor here or been a councillor. So this document does describe, as Councillor Minty says, our rules for how our democracy works. So particularly draw your attention then to page 43 of the agenda paper. And on page 43 you'll see Chapter 2, Part 5, Division 4. It talks about motions. It's talking about reasons for rejecting notices of motion. Chapter 2, Part 5, Division 4, and then Part 5, Division 7, and then Part 5, Division 8. It's talking about notices of motion, how councillors can bring matters to the attention of the other councillors and encourage debate in the chamber. And it also talks about how matters which don't get on the agenda paper can be introduced into the chamber through urgent business. So very much I'm in the hands of ex-councillors' views on how important it is to have the wording around those points quite clear and open so that we still encourage debate in the chamber, and that councillors, even if they're in a minority on any council, can bring matters to the attention of the council and at least initiate discussion in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Councillor Ebles, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate what my other councillors have said, and also to thank our HR and governance coordinator for having an opportunity to update the governance rules as well and provide input into our decision making. And as I think as Councillor Grighouse said, we start off as looking at maybe one or two items, but we took this opportunity to have a look at the whole document, and some things we agree, some things we didn't agree upon, but I think we've made substantial changes which I think will better for this council to operate in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ebles. I think it's, I'd like to add some comment in support of issuing the current version or version before us out for consultation at the date specified. I think the rationale has been qualified, but it is interesting to note that the very policy or strategy we adopted, the active transport strategy, was part of the genesis of considering how we better engage our community in this particular forum. So vast numbers of questions, high engagement, which we know and value and think are important things, but how do the rules ensure that it's clear in how to engage with council and how do they work for the councillors? Councillor Ebles and others have made mention of the recommendations and the review undertaken with neighbouring councils as well, and that was the opportunity taken as part of this review. But really changes can be made to the governance rules at any time and are likely to be required again with the release or the implementation of findings from things like Operation Sandon, which seek to improve the state's governance or local government areas across the state. So there are many reasons that trigger change is essentially what I'm trying to say, and whether councillors initiated or it comes from another level of government, that document is to be responsive, I suppose. So additionally, we look forward to putting this to the public and hearing your feedback. You'll get a Chrissy break, but you can dive in at the back end of January. Councillor Grighouse, did you wish to have a right of reply or close out the debate?
No, I'm quite happy to go to a vote on this, thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I will put to the vote that we place the governance rules on public exhibition. All in favour? Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Item 15 tonight is the signing and sealing of documents. We have an item here, 15.1, asbestos-containing material replacement works for 4 Wharf Street, Queenscliff, contract number 2023/03. So the recommendation is that Council note the use of the common seal on asbestos-containing material replacement works for Wharf Street, Queenscliff, contract number 2023/03 on 21 November 2023. Do I have someone to move this, please? Thank you, Councillor Minty. And Councillor Ebles is our seconder. I don't suppose you want to talk to this, Councillor Minty or Councillor Ebles. Thank you. It's relatively straightforward and I understand the work has commenced. So maybe we'll put this one straight to the vote. All in favour of using the seal for the contract as specified? That's passed unanimously. Thank you. Item 16 is questions without notice. 16.1, questions without notice status update. There are no questions without notice are outstanding, and those that were taken, the responses are provided at adjunct at 6.1 in the agenda tonight. 16.2, questions without notice. So at this point, I'll call for questions without notice from the councillors. Thank you, Councillor Ebbels.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is to the CEO. It's regarding vegetation and potential trimming of vegetation in our car parks, for example, Ocean View, Rip View, the Springs, where people, and given our demographic and our visitors also, sometimes like to sit in their cars and watch the world pass by at a leisurely pace. And I believe that I was just wanting clarification on whether we can do that. I understand weeds might be a bit different, but also some of those are native vegetation. Just wondering what the policy is, if it's our policy, or is it something we need to refer to DECA for approval?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ebbels, for that question. We certainly need MACA consent for the trimming of any of the Indigenous or native vegetation, especially those under the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act. So in relation to the car parks, we made an inquiry we asked the Department of Environment, Energy and Climate Action to consider a MACA consent for the trimming of vegetation at those car parks. And they wrote to us recently, and if you're happy, I'll read from that. DECA has considered your inquiry and has been deemed that MACA's consent will not be provided for this activity as it does not align with the Marine and Coastal Policy 2020. And in particular, they talk about ecosystems there. So they list a series of reasons, but essentially it's because of the species that are in those locations, those species that are identified through different protections, including the Flora and Fauna Guarantee Act.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Grout.
Can I ask a following question of clarification, really, of the answer? I mean, it occurs to me that there is some trimming that's done for the health of the plant. So is that also a problem?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Grigao, a question?
Just questioned, the Hot Rods is actually coming up in the first Saturday of February, as noted every year. Will this year the hub toilets be open for their use on the Saturday night? Because originally when the hub was built, the use of the public toilets were touted as being open on that evening, and if not, if we had to provide portable toilets, what would those costs be?
Through you, Mayor, yes, we are planning to open the hub toilets that evening. We've also had a request from the police for the police to use it as their place of gathering throughout the evening as well. So the hub will be open during the event. Yep.
Other questions for the CEO for questions without notice? No. Thank you, councillors. I'll move us then to item 17, which is just notification of council meetings. So if a planning review meeting is required, that will recur on Wednesday, 14th of Feb in the new year. And the next ordinary meeting of council is also in Feb of the new year on Wednesday, 28 at 7 p.m. again. And the schedule really for the year remains vastly the same as it has this year. So before I declare the meeting closed and state the time therein, I'd just like to thank my colleagues for a really big year and a year of hard work in which I know they're all very dedicated to delivering for this community. I'd like to thank the staff, the CEO, and of course the community for your showing up every week for us and beyond just showing up in the meeting, showing up to help deliver for community as well. So without your engagement and passion, it's really all for naught. So on behalf of council, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas, very Happy New Year, be safe, be merry. It's 8:14 and I declare this meeting closed. Thank you.